Hello and welcome to History with Natalie. I'm Natalie Broomer and today we're going to be talking about Napoleon Bonaparte. If you like historical and biographical videos, then start now by subscribing and clicking the bell for notifications. Napoleon was born on the island of Corsica in the Mediterranean Sea on the 15th of August 1759. Corsica was recently taken over by the French. Napoleon grew up poor and loved to read. He obtained a scholarship to the Brienne Military Academy in northern France, but his time there was not to his liking. The weather was much colder than what he was used to in Corsica. Napoleon was bullied because of his strange accent. He didn't speak French when he arrived at France, as he only spoke Corsican and Italian at home. Napoleon joined the French army as a lieutenant in 1785. Around 1792, after the French Republic was declared, Napoleon entered into Corsican politics but wasn't successful and returned to the French army as an artillery captain in 1793. In December of that year, he defeated the French rebels in Toulon, who were supported by the British. This led to his promotion as Brigadier General. In 1798, Napoleon and the French army went to Egypt with the aim of disrupting the British access to India. However, the French were defeated by the Egyptians and the British. Upon returning to France in 1799, Napoleon overthrew the Directorate, which was the French government of that time, then made himself first consul. One of his first acts was to realign France with the Catholic Church and in 1801 recognized Catholicism as the religion of France. Napoleon gave land and validated the church's salaries as long as they swore to uphold the new French government. In 1802, Napoleon declared himself first consul of France and in 1804 declared himself Emperor of France. Also in 1804, he passed the Napoleonic Code, which standardized laws of citizenship, family, property. These laws were now applicable to the whole of France instead of differing from province to province, but the Napoleonic Code was not great for women as it took away some of the rights they had before the passing of this code. Now a French woman had no right to property upon marriage, including any wages they earned. They could not serve as a witness in court and had no guardianship over their children. It is said that he created somewhat of a police state with spies everywhere, even going so far as exiling his enemies. Napoleon wanted to conquer Europe and Britain and impose his Napoleonic Code on the whole of Europe. From the early 1800s until 1815, Napoleon fought many battles with his neighbouring countries. These would become to be known as the Napoleonic Wars. June the 14th of 1800, Napoleon and his army defeated the Austrians at the Battle of Marengo. In 1805, the Battle of Trafalgar took place between France with his ally Spain against Britain, who was the victor. December the 2nd, 1805, at the Battle of Austerlitz took place between France and Austria, who were allied with Russia. In 1807, Napoleon put his brother Joseph as King of Spain. This started an uprising from the Spanish and Portuguese, which led to the Peninsular War. In 1809, Austria lost to France at the Battle of Wagram, as well as losing territory, was forced to adopt Napoleonic Code. In late 1812, Napoleon invaded Russia, and whilst they won the Battle of Borodino, they were far from home and their supplies were running out. Russia used the scorched earth tactics to draw the French troops further into Russia. This consisted of burning food and livestock, so there would be no food and supplies for the French and they would have no choice but to go further inland. Napoleon continued on to Moscow, but when he got there the city was on fire. Napoleon waited for the Tsar to surrender, but to no avail. Napoleon retreated, eventually arriving in Poland a few weeks later. By the time they reached Poland, his forces were a minuscule size of what they were, due to them being ill-equipped for a Russian winter. By 1813, the other European leaders took advantage of Napoleon's weakness and formed a coalition which consisted of Austria, Britain, Prussia, Russia and Sweden. This coalition defeated the French forces at the Battle of Leipzig. The battle took place as Napoleon refused to accept the coalition's terms, which would still have allowed him to rule France. Napoleon abdicated in 1814 and was exiled to the island of Elba. He escaped a year later, returned to France, gathered an army and took control of France once more. In June 1815, the Battle of Waterloo took place, where the French were defeated by the British and its allies. Napoleon abdicated for a second time and was exiled to St. Helena, where he died of stomach cancer in May 1821, his remains eventually being buried in Paris. Thank you for watching our video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we welcome any comments to improve our future videos.